Welcome to Hell on Earth. In the barren high desert of Colorado, surrounded by miles of emptiness and silence, stands a fortress unlike any other on American soil, ADX Florence, officially known as the United States Penitentiary, Administrative Maximum Facility. To the public, it's called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. To those inside, it's known simply as Hell. Opened in 1994, ADX Florence was built after a series of violent incidents across the federal prison system. Guards attacked, inmates murdered, riots breaking out in maximum security prisons. The government needed a place where violence could no longer happen, where control was absolute. So they built a facility designed not just to imprison men, but to erase their ability to resist. Every inch of ADX was planned for one purpose: containment. The prison sits outside the small town of Florence, Colorado, a community where the sound of wind over sand replaces city noise. From a distance, it looks like a low concrete block blending into the earth. Up close, it's a fortress. 20-foot-high fences lined with razor wire, motion detectors, armed towers, and laser sensors that can detect even the smallest movement. Helicopters patrol occasionally, and inside the perimeter, remote-controlled steel doors and reinforced walls make it impossible to move anywhere without being seen or heard. The life inside. Inmates at ADX live in isolation 23 hours a day. Their cells measure about 7 by 12 feet, built from poured concrete with a solid steel door that has only a small slot for food trays. The bed, desk, and stool are also concrete, molded into the structure. The window is a narrow slit, only 4 inches wide, angled toward the sky so inmates can see nothing but clouds or a piece of mountain ridge. That's intentional. They can't even tell where they are in the compound. Prisoners eat their meals in their cells, delivered through the slot. They shower in the same space, with water controlled remotely by guards. The only time they leave the cell is for 1 hour of recreation in a small, enclosed area known as the dog run. There's no open yard, no view of the horizon, just another concrete box, slightly larger than their cell, where they can pace or stretch. Communication is almost non-existent. Inmates speak through the steel door, their voices bouncing off concrete. Guards rarely make eye contact. There are no communal meals, no shared activities, no moments of conversation. Even exercise equipment is forbidden. For many, the silence becomes unbearable. The inmates of ADX. Over the years, ADX Florence has housed some of the most dangerous men alive. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, who carried out a nationwide bombing campaign between 1978 and 1995, has lived there for decades. Ramzi Yousef, the mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, spends his days in silence only a few cells away. Terry Nichols, one of the Oklahoma City bombers, and Richard Reed, the so-called shoe bomber, have also called this place home. For a time, Joaquin El Chapo Guzmán, the notorious Mexican drug lord known for his spectacular prison escapes, was sent to ADX. But even he, who had once dug tunnels out of maximum security prisons in Mexico, faced a new kind of confinement here. No one escapes ADX, a former warden once said. Not even El Chapo. The cost of security. But what ADX Florence guarantees in safety, it exacts in psychological cost. Over the years, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, have accused the facility of cruel and unusual punishment. Inmates spend years, sometimes decades, without human touch or natural light. Letters are censored. Visits are rare and monitored through thick glass. Psychologists who have studied former inmates describe the symptoms as SHU syndrome, named after the special housing units where solitary confinement is practiced. It includes anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, and loss of memory. In some cases, men have mutilated themselves or begged to be transferred to a lower security facility just to speak to another human being. Even the guards admit that ADX affects everyone inside, prisoners and staff alike. The silence, the monotony, the routine. Some officers rotate out quickly to avoid burnout. Yet, for the government, ADX remains a necessary evil, the last stop for men who have no place left in society. A system built to break you. Former Warden Robert Hood once described ADX as the clean version of hell. His words weren't an exaggeration. The facility's architecture itself is meant to break resistance. The walls slant inward to prevent climbing. Cells are soundproof to stop communication. And every movement is electronically tracked. Prisoners can't see the guards, but the guards can see them through hidden cameras and mirrored observation ports. It's a one-way system of control. When an inmate arrives, he's greeted not by words, but by protocol. Shackles removed only after the door locks shut behind him. His world shrinks to a single room where the lights never fully go off. Time loses meaning. Some count cracks on a wall. Others recite the same words daily to remember they still have a voice. Life after the silence. What surviving ADX does to a human mind. For most men who enter ADX Florence, there is no life beyond its walls. Sentences often stretch for decades or for life, and only a handful ever leave alive. Those who do, through transfers or rare reductions, describe the experience as stepping out of one world and into another, one that no longer feels real. The silence of ADX follows them long after the gates close behind them. When an inmate spends years in near total isolation, time itself begins to disintegrate. One former prisoner, speaking anonymously to a journalist after his release, said, "You start to forget how to talk to people. You hear your own voice echo, and it doesn't sound human anymore." He had spent 11 years at ADX, most of it in what's called the H Unit, the most restrictive section of the prison, home to terrorists, spies, and gang leaders. He recalled that the most human contact he had in a decade was the sound of food trays sliding through the slot in his steel door. The psychology of absolute control. Experts have described ADX Florence as a laboratory of isolation. Every sensory input, sight, sound, touch, is carefully managed to maintain total control. That control, though effective for security, comes at a cost. Prison psychologists working under confidentiality agreements have reported widespread mental decline among inmates, even those who arrived stable. Dr. Craig Haney, a psychologist who has studied solitary confinement in U.S. prisons, once noted that prolonged isolation creates a collapse of identity. Humans are social creatures, he explained. When you remove social feedback, you erase parts of what makes a person functional. Some inmates have tried to fight back against that erasure. They talk to themselves, sing, or tap coded messages on walls in hope someone else will hear. Others write endless letters that are never sent or draw on the concrete with whatever they can find. But many simply withdraw. In 2015, an internal report documented multiple suicide attempts within the facility. Though few details were ever released publicly, the prison within the prison. For inmates who break rules even inside ADX, there is an even harsher level of punishment, the control unit. There, prisoners can spend years without any physical contact whatsoever. Visits happen through thick bulletproof glass, and even lawyers describe the environment as spirit-crushing. A former warden once admitted, "You can feel the despair there. It's quiet, but you can feel it in the air." He described watching tough men, cartel leaders, mob bosses, former soldiers, crumble under the monotony of isolation. Some stopped speaking entirely. Others developed what staff called the 1,000-yard stare, a blank, hollow gaze that never focused on anything. For those few who show good behavior over years, there is a slow, tiered process toward step-down programs, allowing transfer to lower security prisons. But it takes years of perfect compliance, no incidents, no rule violations, no signs of instability. Even then, the transition is difficult. After being conditioned to a life of silence, many struggle to re-enter a world full of noise and movement. Stories from the inside. One of the most well-known survivors of ADX, Thomas Silverstein, spent over 35 years in solitary confinement, much of it at ADX Florence. He was once labeled America's most dangerous prisoner after killing a guard during a riot in the 1980s. Over the decades, his mental health deteriorated, and though he wrote several letters describing his life in isolation, his words often read like those of a man slowly disappearing from reality. "I feel like a ghost," he wrote. "I exist, but I'm not alive." He died in 2019, still under solitary conditions. Another case was Jack Powers, a former Army veteran convicted of bank robbery. who spent years in ADX after assaulting a fellow inmate in another prison. In isolation, he developed schizophrenia and severe depression, repeatedly self-harming in attempts to feel something. His lawsuits helped expose the mental health crisis within the supermax system. ADX isn't just a prison, Powers once said. It's a machine that grinds people down until there's nothing left to grind. A debate that never ends. The existence of ADX Florence continues to spark debate. Supporters argue it's necessary, a fortress for the nation's most violent and unmanageable criminals. They point to the absence of riots, escapes, or staff deaths as proof that the system works. For the families of victims, ADX represents justice served, a place where the most dangerous men are locked away forever. But human rights advocates see something darker. In 2017, the European Court of Human Rights refused to extradite a suspect to the U.S. until they were assured he wouldn't face ADX conditions, calling them inhumane. Amnesty International, the ACLU, and multiple psychiatric associations have all condemned the use of long-term solitary confinement, especially for inmates with mental illness. Even some of the prison's creators have voiced regret. Former Warden Robert Hood, who once helped run the facility, later admitted, "We were trying to solve violence with silence, but silence can be its own kind of violence." The silence that echoes. Today, ADX Florence still operates as the final stop for the most feared prisoners in America. Its inmates include terrorists, spies, and gang leaders who will likely never see freedom again. But the true story of ADX isn't only about those locked inside. It's about the system that believes such total isolation is the only answer to danger. Outside its concrete walls, the desert wind still blows over the Rockies. Locals say the prison is so quiet you can almost forget it's there. But for the men inside, that silence never ends. It seeps into their minds, their memories, their very sense of self. A silence so deep that even after release, they carry it forever. To survive ADX Florence isn't just to live through confinement. It's to fight against disappearing, to hold on to the last fragments of humanity in a place built to erase them.